he pulled the bat back and he watched that first pitch come in and he took a big old mighty swing and missed. "Strike one," said the umpire. And a voice from the stands comes out, "You can do it, Mr. Moore." So he gets ready again and watches that pitch come in and swings even harder this time and misses by a bigger amount. "Strike two," said the umpire. "Come on, Mr. Moore," the voice from the stands comes out. "You can do it." And so he lined up again and said a little prayer. I know, because I've been in this spot. Watches that ball comes in, and you could hear the hush come over the stands. Well, not really. They were too busy eating popcorn. And he swings and misses. "You're out," says the umpire. After the game, they're driving home, and Mr. Moore turned to his son, Johnny, and said, "Johnny, was that you yelling out encouragement to me?" "Yeah, Dad, it was me." "Well, son, it was really nice, but why did you call me Mr. Moore?" "Because I didn't want anybody to know I was related to you." I love that story. It helps us to know the difference between a fan and a follower. Several years ago, there was a Bible study actually written called Fan or Follower. I Don't Want to Be a Fan is the real name of it. And it talked about how in the Bible there were people who were fans of Jesus, and how there were other people who were followers of Jesus. The fans of Jesus, quite frankly, were easy to see. They're the ones that when the going got tough and things got hard, left. The followers are those who said, "I'll go with you all the way." When we think about daring greatly for Jesus, it is my firm belief that the only way we're going to really do that is if we become better followers of Jesus instead of fans only. Because you see, fans are fickle. They are. Ask Tony Romo. Exactly. You know, the world of sports is really a great place to look at this subject and this topic because, quite frankly, there are teams out there, in fact, almost every team has a lot of fans, especially when things are going well. Even Cowboys have fans when things are going well. I love to hate the Green Bay Packers. Just so you know, I was a Chicago Bears fan. Yeah, well, be that as it may. But I'm always impressed with the Green Bay fans. It's 3 degrees below. There's an ice storm raging. The fans have been called on to bring their snow shovels to shovel off the field, and they show up. I hate to think what those season pass holders paid so they could bring their snow shovel and help shovel the field and do it with a smile. They're dedicated. There are some Bear fans like that. There really are even some cowboy followers like that. They're the ones who, no matter how bad things are going, show up. Now, this was a particularly good week in the city of Duncanville. What you may or may not know is if you don't follow girls basketball in the state of Texas, you've missed the best show in town. Amen. Let me tell you something. Last night about 9:45, the Duncanville Pantherette girls basketball team was crowned champions of the state of Texas with, I think, a 39-0 record. Yeah. Now, let me tell you something. They have fans and they have followers. The followers are the ones who are there every single time, even when things aren't good. The only problem is our girls' basketball team, it's been so long since it's been bad, they don't know what it looks like. The girls' basketball team here is so good that it's the only place I've ever gone to a boys and girls basketball game at the same time. And there's a bigger crowd at the 6:30 game for the girls than there is for the 8 o'clock game with the boys because the girls are better than the boys. And that's too bad because the boys weren't so bad this year either. And they're going to be better. I grew up with grandparents who were Cub fans. And they inbred that into me. I love the Cubs. I bleed Cubby blue. The best part is I convinced my daughter Jaylee that she's a Cub fan too. It's called evangelism. For Christmas, she asks for blue jerseys. She's always wanting to know how the boys are doing. And now she's dating and in love with Austin, who's a bigger sports geek than I am, so she never even has to ask me anymore. The Cubs have followers. You have to be a follower for the Cubs. Because if you were a fan, Wrigley would be empty, and it's full every game. And it's not a great park. It's old. It's beat up. The players actually hate it. You have to be a follower. I could talk about different teams that have armies of followers and very few fans. But I want to talk about Jesus. Because you see, Jesus, well, he had some fans. He had lots of fans for a while. He had lots of fans until chapter 6 of the Gospel of John. You see, fans are the folks who show up only long enough to find out who's going to win and then they leave. Fans are the ones who, when your team is down or up by 25 points, escape to get out of the parking lot before the traffic really hits. Fans are those who say, well, better luck next year. We'll see how the team does. Fans are those who say to Jesus, well, Jesus, you kind of struck out on that one. You see, in the 6th chapter of John, some amazing things have happened. And just before then, Jesus has done an amazing miracle. He's fed the 5,000, which is more like 8,000 because it was 5,000 men and then women and children, and they didn't count them. And we know how many things Jesus had to do that because they found 5 loaves and 2 fish. Remember that story? He takes those and he feeds them. And the reaction to that was amazement. People wanted to take him away and make him king. All because he fed them. But Jesus and the disciples snuck away. John tells us, even though they had snuck away, the people searched for them so they could follow Jesus. But what did they want when they were following Jesus? They wanted, the rest of chapter 6 tells us, another miracle. He had healed the blind man. He had healed a lame man. He had brought somebody back from dead. He had fed the 5,000. And all they said was, Jesus, if you do one more miracle, we'll really be with you. And Jesus said no. Jesus said, that's all, folks. Jesus says, all you want's another miracle. You either have to choose me or not. And he knew what the response was going to be. When Jesus says, you either have to choose to follow me or not, some of them chose not. They turned and walked away because they weren't willing to pay the cost of following Jesus. Now remember, I said there was going to be a test earlier, especially you kids. I know the adults were paying attention, but remember when Joe read the first scripture reading, he said that Jesus invited Andrew and Peter and James and John to do what? Do you remember? Anybody? Come, follow, and I will make you fishers of men. Whew, you got it right. All right. Just so you know, next time I say there's a test, I'm not going to give you the answers. Well, maybe not that easy. You see, Jesus begins his ministry in the book of Mark at the very beginning of his time with a very specific invitation. Come, follow me. But it wasn't just an invitation to play follow the leader. It was an invitation to come, follow me, and I will teach you how to fish for men. You see, these men knew how to fish. They were fishermen. That's what they did for a living. They knew how to catch fish. And when Jesus said, come and I'll teach you how to fish for men, they understood what that meant. They understood that Jesus wanted to build a movement. They understood that Jesus wanted to change the world. They understood that Jesus was calling them to something greater and bigger than simply being fishermen or attorneys or tax collectors or teachers or whatever you are. The call that Jesus puts on our life is to move us to become something else. Always. Turn to a neighbor and say always. Always. You see, Jesus invites us to come follow him so we can become fishers of men. That's your calling and my calling and the choir's calling and Glenn's calling, Bonnie's calling. And if you take your finger and point it at your chest and you say, my calling. Because that's what it is. We're all called to become fishers of men. Fishers of men. We're all called to bring people into relationship with Jesus and to disciple them as Jesus discipled the disciples. It's one of the real faults in the American church, I think. You see, the invitation that Jesus makes says, come follow me. It doesn't say, come follow me and not be changed. It doesn't say, come follow me and keep living life the way we've always lived it. It says, come follow me and become fishers of men. One of the problems is that oftentimes in America we hear the invitation to come follow Jesus as simply an addendum to our already very busy lives. Come follow Jesus. Come follow me, he says. And you think it's just adding one more thing to your Sunday morning schedule. But the invitation to come follow Jesus isn't about Sunday morning. It's about every day. It's about what we wake up for in the morning and what we go to bed thinking about at night. Come follow me, Jesus says. And we're called to make disciples like Jesus made disciples. And then to answer the hard questions. Because you see, it's not always easy being a disciple. There are people out there who are going to make fun of you because you're a disciple. There are people out there who are going to disagree with your theology out there. There are people out there who are going to think you're crazy, stupid, fill in the blank, because you believe in Jesus. There are people who are going to think you're short-sighted because you follow Jesus. How do I know? Well, because Jesus says so. Right there in chapter 6, verse 66, people grumbled and went on their way, following another path. You see, this story in chapter 6 of John's Gospel helps us to understand what our calling is and what we're called to, and maybe what we're called beyond for. You see, we live in this world that quite frankly, I don't know if you've noticed, isn't always very godly. Did y'all notice that? Sometimes our world's not a very godly place. Sometimes our churches aren't even godly places. I think it's because most of us are fans of Jesus but not followers. And remember what fans do? They leave. But followers stay. It's hard. It's hard being a follower of Jesus because sometimes you have to leave other things out. Being a follower of Jesus means doing what Jesus says instead of what someone else says. Sometimes it's even ourselves. When we talk about being a follower, when we think about following Jesus, it means being different. It means being a disciple. It means making a choice that says, Jesus first, not me first. Jesus first, not me first. There's an old hymn that helps us understand what a follower looks like. And if you know this, you can sing with me. Some of you are old enough to know this hymn. Yeah, them too. Where he leads me, I will. See, look at that. Where he leads me, I will follow. Where he leads me, I will follow. I'll go with him, with him. No, it doesn't really tell us how old we are. It tells us that you know the old hymn. And it's about being a follower. You see, just so you know, here's what the fan would sing. I'll go with you till the summer. You know, when the baseball games start, and there are picnics and rivers to ford. Or this, I'll go with you till the winter. And it's too cold, too snowy, too hard. Or, I'll go with you till life's a bummer. I'll stay so long, all the day. You see, fans, it's about staying until there's a better way or a different offer. Followers, where do they go? With him all the way. And that's what we're called to do as we dare greatly for Jesus. Amen.